Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you back to another episode of the Primetime Rundown. Episode number 104 on the Primetime Rundown is presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Alongside Mike Szabo, Joey Jarzynka on hand with you on this pretty terrible Friday night outside here in the New York area. Mike, good to see you, sir. How are things on your side?
Doing well. We finished up all the paper airplane constructing and all finals are done, so we are free for the next month.
Look at that. Congratulations to Mike Szabo for graduating from from being a child and moving on up in the world. So a nice thing there, and still got another semester, but good for you there to keep on rolling there. So, ladies and gentlemen, we continue rolling on here. Episode number 104 of the Primetime Rundown is presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Be sure to download their newest hit song, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us. You could download that on any platform that you can find your music. Apple Podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, or Pandora. Well, Mike, there has been so much going on in the world of baseball. We'll get started there, but also cannot forget about the world of football, too. We now know that it'll be Zach Wilson starting for the New York Jets because just a couple of days ago, we heard about Mike White, who would be suiting up for sure. We'll be talking about, of course, Thursday Night Football recap from last night, San Francisco and Seattle. San Francisco did clinch the NFC West yesterday. Also, we will be concluding the NFL with our pick selections as well for week number 15. And of course, tomorrow morning will be the FIFA World Cup final between Argentina and France. Lionel Messi most likely taking part in his final World Cup match tomorrow, and he'll be taking on probably the pretty much the next best player in the world in Kylian Mbappe. Also, the National Hockey League staying here in New York, too. The Rangers are on a 5-game win streak. We'll talk about if they can snap out of their early shortcomings. But first, let's get things started right here from New York and take a peek at in the Bronx and take a peek at who the Yankees signed just yesterday. It was a left-handed pitcher by the name of Carlos Rodon to a 6-year deal worth $162 million, a full no trade clause, Mike. And this is a big thing here for what this Yankees team needed. They lost Jameson Taillon. They have some question marks when it comes to Frankie Montas, when it comes to Nestor Cortez, because can you get a repeat season from Cortez? How is Luis Severino going to be down the stretch? We don't know exactly how that'll be. So they needed some protection right behind Garrett Cole, and they did exactly that for about $27 million. They got the 31-year-old from the San Francisco Giants off of free agency.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good deal, although to me, in my opinion, a year too late. I would have loved to have signed this guy last year, so make of that what you will, but I think it's a really positive sign for the Yankees. I think you could always debate what they really need more. Obviously you talk about the Yankees, their recent postseason collapse, probably more attributed to hitting and the lack of it in October and whatnot. But I mean, you could get both. This is a deal that's really positive for them. Like you said, they really needed to solidify their rotation. They traded away Jordan Montgomery at the deadline. The Jameson Taillon got paid and left this offseason. Like you said, question marks on Nestor Cortez. I'm pretty confident in him. Luis Severino, there'll still be the injury, the specter of injury hanging over him. We've talked about for really a couple of years now how the Yankees really need a number 2 behind Garrett Cole, and they went out and got one for not only next year, but the next couple of years for Rodon. He's got good numbers in Yankee Stadium. More importantly, probably for Hal Steinbrenner, or at least we hope it is important for him. Rodon's got good numbers against the Houston Astros, who literally that's obviously going to be the biggest team they're going to be chasing in the American League if the Yankees have any aspirations of doing anything next year. So really positive signs all around. He's got a great mentality that I think can be able to deal with the rigors of New York. Slot right in there to your number 2, and if he stays healthy, he's a fantastic addition to the squad. And if everybody stays healthy, that's a really nice starting rotation that the Yankees have.
It is, but also this is something that you had brought up over the course of the last few weeks, Mike, is is that, yeah, the pitching has been pretty good for the Yankees the last couple of years, but the whole thing, though, is that the hitting has not been up to par. We've gotten to see, obviously, what Aaron Judge brings to the table night in and night out, but there's also some, a big drop off after him. And I think also when you look and say to yourself, well, you saw probably about a couple hours ago, Andrew Benintendi signed a 5-year deal with the Chicago White Sox worth $75 million. I know that was a man that you wanted back to play left field. But again, this is a team that simply is not going to go Steve Cohen style or, former George Steinbrenner style. His son, Hal, already said that they're not going to buy these championships. So I would expect a couple of trades coming to kind of shore up that left field spot and potentially, even at shortstop, too. We know that center field will be manned by Harrison Bader, especially after a fantastic postseason from him and down the stretch from him. But, there's still a lot of question marks with this Yankees lineup. And, there's a lot of people that have said, well, this is probably the best 1-2 punch in all of Major League Baseball with Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon. But the whole thing, though, that I look at over the Throgs Neck Bridge, and I say to myself, oh, also don't forget, despite the age, Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer are still a fantastic duo. And, there's still some questions to be answered here for the Yankees, especially when they do not want to be spending the way that George would have wanted his son to spend it.
Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, like going back to what I said, a lot of people question going after any pitching overall because it's not the main reason why they lost and then got absolutely schooled in the championship series by the Astros. It's because they're hitting consistently the last couple of years just goes cold. No matter what names you put in there, there's just no hitting in the postseason. Consistent. That's consistent enough. But they certainly needed to address pitching, as you mentioned before. But also the oh, I just lost my train of thought.
With the pitching, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah,
With the hitting too.
they needed a guy like Rondon,
Yeah.
and then in terms of their hitting, as we said, it hasn't been that consistent. So as much as hitting, as much as Rodon was a need, hitting is especially a need as well. And listen, the Astros are always going to be brought up, and that's a team you're looking to go after. And hitting is what they're going to need to address next. Now, to get back to what I was wanting to say, I think what's really up next for the Yankees is probably subtractions. Obviously you get into the minutia. The 40-man is getting kind of tight. They need to clear some room and whatnot. But obviously, you just mentioned Harrison Bader is locked down center field. We know he's going to be the starter there. The he who must not be named, Aaron Hicks, I think is the first on your list of shipping him out. Obviously, you had the emergence of Oswaldo Cabrera. If you do make some trade to bring in another left fielder, you have some depth there, really renders Hicks's roster spot useless. So I think you could figure out a way to move that contract, move at least something off of your payroll, as well as his roster spot off. And, what always hurts this team is Josh Donaldson's contract and the $25 million for a way out of prime guy. All that money was just taken on in order to get Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, which kind of, there was hills and valleys to that move, but I think overall the entire body of work was an absolute egghead of a move last year by Cashman.
Well. I mean, the thing to me is that when you look at the Yankees overall as a team right now, they go in with their starting left fielder pretty much as Oswaldo Cabrera, right? They go in with their starting center fielders, Harrison Bader. Obviously, their starting right fielders, Aaron Judge. Or you could even make the case that Giancarlo Stanton could potentially be out in left field, but I mean, then who's the designated hitter then? It all depends. But now there's also a lot of chatter, too, that Gleyber Torres could potentially be shipped out for some pitching as well, potentially to beef up that bullpen. Tommy Kahnle is not going to be the only player who Brian Cashman will bring in this season or this offseason. No way. You still have to replace, and it's funny because Tyler Adele and I spoke about this. Pretty much we broke it down. You lose Michael King to most likely, or for most likely a few months into the season with that broken elbow that he sustained down in Baltimore in July, which almost destroyed the Yankees season, oddly enough.
Mm-hmm.
He was almost the glue guy.
Yep.
You lose you lose Aroldis Chapman, which again, it really is not
really
that
a loss.
not as I say, it's not really that big of a deal, but it's a roster spot. Zach Britton also is, again, someone that brought leadership, but could not bring, obviously, the physical mentality of it. And then you've got the other guys like the Marinaccios. You've got the guys like the Loizagas, Clark Schmidt, Lucas Litke. You've got a few other guys that you'd be able to kind of piece together. Clay Holmes as well. So obviously with those aforementioned names, you also want to bring in someone that could potentially be, that setup guy. We don't know who it could be. Maybe a 6th inning guy, 7th inning guy. They've got Kahnle now, who they have in there, but like I said, there's a lot of question marks too. And then we also talk about the bats too. Go back to what we were saying too. The way that the season ended, DJ LeMahieu was on the injured list. So he's going to come back healthy. Now you've got some issues there where you might have no choice but to really trade away a Josh Donaldson. And how is it going to work, though, Mike? That's, I think, the biggest thing is that who's going to want to take on $21 million? I don't even know of any team.
No, I don't even think he's tradable at this point. He looked so bad for huge swaths of the season, and I mean, he was meme-worthy bad in the postseason. Todd Frazier swing 2.0 down at Minute Maid Park. I think what's going to wind up happening is the Yankees are just going to start him at third base to start off next year and see how it goes for the first month or so. And if he's really doing bad, you're just going to DFA him and you're just going to eat that money and, go have a nice life, go retire somewhere. And that's it.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we will be keeping our eyes on because there's a lot of names out there still that the Yankees could potentially be going after. But again, as we said at the top of the show, is that we expect the Yankees to not go crazy any further in terms of their spending spree. San Francisco, though, Mike, they went on a little bit of a spending spree because they missed out on a couple of shortstops. They missed out on Aaron Judge.
Arson Judge, excuse me.
Right, excuse me. Yes, that's right. Arson Judge. They missed out on Arson Judge. They missed out on Aaron Judge. They missed out on Trey Turner. They missed out on Xander Bogaerts. There's a lot of guys that that San Francisco tried to get to pretty much or kind of speed up their retool, if you will. One of their strongest assets was their infield at the time, and that was the beginning of the last decade when they won those World Series. When it was the Buster Posies, when it was Pablo Sandoval, Brandon Crawford, Joe Panik, Brandon Belt, one of the best infields of the decade, if you think about it, from all the way from third to first, and even the catcher, obviously one of the best catchers that the game has ever seen. But now, you still have you have an Evan Longoria over at third, Brandon Crawford, who is 35, Brandon Belt, who is a 35-year-old free agent who is not signed technically with the Giants any longer. We'll see how long that lasts because there's a lot of talk that San Francisco wants to bring him back. And then, you look the rest of the way too, and who's really the second baseman? Taro Estrada, Wilmer Flores. So they needed to bring in, a somebody that could potentially speed up something, and they have Jock Peterson. They've got Mitch Haniger. They've got a good amount of players that are I guess kind of speeding up this retool, but they made it even better by signing Carlos Correa.
Well, I think this entire offseason, they were clearly looking a guy that they could hang their hat on as the face of the franchise for the foreseeable future.
Oh,
They
yeah.
wanted to bring out the Brinks truck for Judge and do the same with him there. They tried to do the same with all the other names you mentioned, and they eventually landed on Correa. And that I don't know if it's exactly speed up, but I mean, sure, they'd obviously love to get back to their winning ways and that sort of thing, but that they also view this guy as a cornerstone piece for the future that's going to take them into the next generation. This is a 13-year contract. He's going to be around for a while. So I don't know if exactly it's speed up because I don't know if they're really going anywhere next year. I know they made some signings to try and fortify their pitching by quantity. I guess the signing Minaya and forget they signed
Ross
some
Stripling too.
Ross Stripling. That's right, earlier in the week. But there's a lot of question marks. I think Logan Webb and yeah, I think he had a slightly down 2022 season, so trying to get him to bounce back. The bullpen, what's sort of there in the bullpen and whatnot. There's a lot of questions around the lineup too. So I don't know how far they're really going to go in the immediate term next year, but I mean, Correa is a move for not only next year, but for the future. He's going to make their lineup better, no doubt, and he's going to make the ball club better. But it's about he's the face of the franchise for the foreseeable future, and that was really, really attractive to Correa. You have to give credit to him that he played his cards right. Houston did not want to pay him for a big money extension. He signed, to Minnesota on a deal that he would not have signed anywhere but in Minnesota. There's no other destination he would have signed that kind of very short-term, high AAV deal with an opt-out after the first year than it was in the Minnesota Twins, which I don't know. Maybe if you're a Minnesota fan, you feel that that's a slap in the face, but that's just the truth of where the state of the franchise is. So he opts out after 1 year, and now he gets a massive long-term deal and is paid out west. So kudos to him.
13 years, $350 million with no opt-out availability and a full no-trade clause. So he is locked in San Francisco for the rest of his career. That's it. We will not be seeing Carlos Correa move around at all. He is now the face of the San Francisco Giants. I mean, when you look and say to yourself, Correa has been injured a good amount in Houston, right? He had some back issues. But the good thing, though, is that looking from the Elias Sports Bureau, 89% of the team's games he's played in the last 3 seasons, which is a good thing. Last year, Mike, 64 RBIs, 22 home runs, a 291 batting average for him, which is his second best. His best, obviously, was the World Series year back in 2017. So it was good. As you brought up, he bet on himself exactly the way Aaron Judge did, and he got paid mightily for it. No doubt about it. But I agree with you there in terms of the Giants and their trajectory is that it's kind of a team that is in purgatory and it's in limbo a little bit, because when you say to yourself, you saw a couple of years ago, this team was one of the best teams in baseball. They got taken out in 5 by the Dodgers. We remember that. I think that was the COVID year. It was not, or no, I'm sorry. It was the year. I think it was was it 21 or 19?
No, it was 21 because it was full crowds. And
right, exactly. Yes. Yeah, 2021. And I remember they lost Game 5 in Oracle Park. Yeah. They lost it in their park. It was terrible. And that was, I think, Gabe Kapler's first season at the helm as the manager for the Giants, and things simply could not go more wrong than it already did. It was really sad to see what happened there, but again, this is a team that is in purgatory. It's in limbo. They needed somebody there. We now wonder where Brandon Crawford's going to go, and I know that, he's kind of one of the faces of the franchise because he's been there for so long. He is a World Series champion. You also have, again, that great infield from the early 2010s is no longer. There's only one guy left, literally one guy left. Panic is gone. Sandoval is gone. Belt is gone. So it's just Crawford. Where is he going to play? I expect him to be potentially on the bench. But again, this is solid insurance, though, to have Crawford in the lineup or have Crawford on your bench, because in case those back injuries or any injury for Correa flares up, you've got a solid shortstop that can come in and fill that role at a moment's notice. So definitely a good signing there by San Francisco, though. Again, 13 years, though, it's so long. It's such a long deal, Mike. But again, when you look at the market and you see what Trey Turner got, and it's always funny, we always bring this up. Dave Dombrowski always destroys the market, right? If you notice that, right? He destroyed the shortstop market with Trey Turner. And then he destroyed the market on pitching with Taijuan Walker too, right? You just gotta love that man, right? You just have to love him. It's fantastic, It's not only inflation everywhere else. It's just inflation in baseball too, because you look at that general manager and say, what? At some point he'll get fired from the Phillies, and then they'll be going downhill. So, yeah, that's where we're going. We saw what he did in Detroit. We saw what he did in Boston. So that's where I'll stop right there. So let's keep on rolling here in terms of baseball, Mike. Baltimore signed Adam Frazier yesterday to a one-year deal worth $8 million. San Francisco signed Ross Stripling, the right-handed pitcher from Toronto, two-year deal worth $25 million, opt out after 2023. Minnesota signed Christian Vasquez, the catcher who was on the World Series team in Houston, to a three-year deal worth $30 million, $10 million average annual value. Atlanta acquired catcher Sean Murphy from Oakland in a three-team deal where they saw William Contreras head off to Milwaukee and a whole bunch of prospects and minor league players head off to the Bay Area. Toronto signed right-handed pitcher Chris Bassett to a three-year deal worth $63 million. You brought up earlier about San Francisco signing Sean Manaea, the lefty, to a two-year deal worth $25 million, opt out after 2023. And then just a few minutes, Mike, after you and I had gotten off, or I think it was actually the day after, the right-handed pitcher from Japan, Kodai Senga, signed with the New York Mets to a 5-year deal worth $75 million. So that is your hot stove update here on the Eastern Observer. So a lot of good things have happened, but it did slow down, though, since the last time we saw each other, obviously. And, Mike, we brought this up actually in our group chain with our good friend Ian Schraier. This might be one of the craziest winter meetings and one of the craziest off seasons that we have seen since you were a toddler back in 2008 when the Yankees signed A.J. Burnett, Damaso Marte, just because I had to say his name, CC Sabathia, and Mark Teixeira. Right? We remember those signings, and those signings were absolutely crazy. That pretty much kicked off all that kicked off that 2009 World Series run.
Yeah. I mean, it's just been, the last few years, it's really a long, cold winter, and then everything would kind of flood in late January and whatnot. I think you gotta feel that the lockout had something to do with it as well. And I mean, I know that feels like a million years ago, because thank God the season wound up being preserved and gone off without a hitch. You got your entire 162 games. But I think the lockout kind of had, kind of put some impetus from the union to kind of make sure its guys are getting paid. And especially, the frontline guy, of course, to all of that was Aaron Judge, and he got absolutely paid. And obviously that's great for him, but it's great for the union too, and marketing that and the rest of their players. So I'm sure there was a bit more urgency. If it's not in the front of people's minds, certainly for the union it was that let's get these guys signed and let's start, breaking the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And also keeping in mind too, there's also another player too that we did not bring up, especially with someone so close to home, Mike. The Mets, they signed another free agent today. It was catcher Omar Narvaez to a 2-year contract. So we know about Narvaez's offense. It's not great. His bat is not great. But what they got here was defense. And again, we're Yankees fans here, but we do see what the Mets kind of had trouble with from that position. They've got a catcher in waiting in Francisco Alvarez, which is great, but he's not ready for the show yet. So you've got Tomas Nido, you've got James McCann, you've got Francisco Alvarez, and now you bring in Omar Narvaez, which kind of signals to me that because of the porous play from James McCann, he might be on his way out. But again, who's going to want to take on that bloated of a contract?
Yeah, it's a really tough position to be in. Yeah, like if you're the Mets, yes, he wants to be gone, but you're going to be hard pressed to find a team that wants to take on that sort of money. No non-contending team wants to take that, even if they need the talent. A non-contending team doesn't really probably want to add a big contract unless you sweeten the deal somehow, and probably a way that's not exactly good for the Mets. A team really trying to build through free agency at least these next couple of years so that they can rebuild their farm system. So I don't think you'd really want to attach some higher end prospects just to get James McCann out of the way. So really interesting how they're gonna figure all of that out. The
Yeah.
interesting thing about Narvaez is like not trying to. I don't want to compare too much with the Yankees or Mets or like say this is going to happen, but I mean, listen, the Yankees got more of an they had to because more of an emergency thing. They got Jose Trevino last year, and what was
Mm-hmm.
the profile on him? A
Yeah.
defensive first guy that you're not getting much from the bat and whatnot. And what happened? Your coaches worked with him and whatnot. He turned into an all-star this year.
Yeah.
So you never know. There could be some upside there, and it always seems a good way to go and with the defense first at the catcher position.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. Especially too when McCann's defense was not great either. But also, what Narvaez brings when we saw him with Milwaukee is the way he frames those pitches too. You get to see exactly how he does it. He does it at a spectacular level. And that's exactly what the Mets are going to need too. So it's gonna be fun to see how the catchers will be kind of rotated. Who's gonna be the one to lose in musical chairs? That's exactly what it's going to be. I think that there's not going to be any musical chairs. I think it's just simply going to be McCann's on his way out. But if they can't move that contract, then it just might be. It just might be a musical chairs. Who's going to be the odd man out? And it's unfortunate because they took a big chance on James McCann. He did really well at his last stop, but simply could not get the wheels in motion in Queens. Not that great, but that was a 2-year deal worth $15 million that Billy Epler, the general manager for the Mets, had signed him to today. Last week, also, we got a chance to break the news, or Mike did actually broke the news about Brandon Nimmo signing that big 8-year deal. He was formally reintroduced yesterday at Citi Field by the media and everything like that, just to say that he is extremely grateful. Basically, again, just this is all summarizing and just paraphrasing and whatnot, but basically he's extremely excited to stay with one team, and he's trying to have him give himself that legacy, and that's, I think, the big thing what Aaron Judge wanted to do too. And I think that it's kind of coming back a little bit where we saw Mike in a few years ago where we're these super teams, and still I think that still is the case, obviously, like in the NBA or whatnot. But I think what you're seeing here is that you're seeing some of these players kind of appreciate their roles on their respective teams, where they want to not only win, but they want to make a name for themselves and also for their city that they're playing for too. They don't have to hop from team to team. It's not where they have 5 powerful guys. All right, we're going to go win the World Series. No, it's not that. And then they move to the next city, 5 powerful guys. It's not the way that it is.
Well, it's the power of New York also, and there's an attractiveness to playing in New York, and certainly nowadays it doesn't have to be exclusively for the Yankees, as much as that may hurt some Yankee fans. It goes for both teams in Queens and the Bronx. There's something to not only Nimmo's getting paid, but he is the. I mean, you don't you just pencil him in, and you don't have to think about it. You're everyday center fielder for a major market team in New York, and that is the New York Mets. And there's just something to that that's so attractive.
Yeah.
He got paid really well. I mean, I know some fans may think it's slightly expensive. I think it's a perfect deal. Listen, at the end of the day, it's not your money. Steve Cohen's spending. I think he's a perfect leadoff hitter for their lineup, something that they needed. And it was a really good move for Steve Cohen and company. And man, he's gone on quite the spending spree that I mean, probably is like driving the rest of the owners around the league up a wall with what he's doing to the payroll. They're probably throwing the same chairs that Steve Cohen was throwing around. What was it, last year when they were having that bad trade deadline or
Yep.
everything? Those owners are throwing those same chairs around, saying, "What the hell is this guy doing to us?"
Oh
He's
yeah.
just he's just blasting past all of the luxury tax bill on the Mets is going to be higher than some teams' payrolls
Oh yeah.
this
Oh yeah.
coming year. It's insane.
Yeah.
But if you're a Mets fan, you have to love every second of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that, again, Mets fans are not used to. They're not used to seeing their team spend this kind of money. And when they do, they're typically for a washed up Robinson Cano or a washed up Jason Bay. This was way when you were younger, Mike, but a washed up Jason Bay. And I'm sure Mets fans never want to hear about the legendary number 44 Jason Bay ever again. Pittsburgh Pirates legend Jason Bay. So yeah, not really that great. But hey, listen, for how many years did the Mets envy the Yankees because they wanted to be them at some point, and they will always be the little brother to the Yankees, despite how much their owner is worth. It's exactly how it will be because the Yankees are a worldwide known brand, and the Mets are trying to become that. So they've got a long ways to go, though, Mike.
Yeah, sure. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just find it's so hard to hate the Mets right now. It is just. I mean, obviously, as a Yankee fan, I wasn't one
Yeah.
of them, but we didn't grow up watching George at his fine work and what he was doing. But you're getting to see it out here with the Mets, and you're involved. Even if you don't get them, you're involved in every single free agent. Oh, they're checking in on this person and checking in on that. That's where the Mets are generating toward, and now they're free spending these eons amounts of money for fantastic talent that, in terms of free agency, they had never ever signed the guys of this caliber beforehand,
Hmm.
especially in my time. So you gotta love every second of it.
Yeah.
If you're the Mets, I think right now their rotation is pretty much solidified. Yes, age is going to be a question probably, and obviously that translates to health. But obviously, everybody stays healthy. That is without a doubt the best rotation in baseball. Their bullpen probably needs maybe a little trade or whatever in January or something like that to fill in one more guy, and you'd
Yeah.
like one more bat. Probably it's going if you're going to bring up the Thanos meme of Michael Conforto, where has your failure has brought you back to me, kind of re-signing, stick and go back to left field where you never should have left. Um, or you go out and get a JD Martinez, maybe something like that. Which
That's the route that I expect them to go to. Yeah.
I would. I feel like people diminish him way too much. He was fine. Like the Mets don't need a superstar to fill in their lineup right now. He was a guy he was 270 with I don't know 20 something home runs, like 70 something RBIs. Like he gives you league average offense. You stick him in the 5 position, a good veteran guy that I mean, who else other than Lindor really has like deep postseason experience in terms of the lineup. So there's valuable intangibles there as well. So I think that's a way to go there from here on out for the Mets.
Yeah, exactly. And again, you brought up the lineup part because we know on the pitching side, there's World Series champions on there. You've got the first two, Justin Verlander with the Astros and 2019 Nationals, Max Scherzer. So you've got the experience there, but you got to get that experience onto the offensive side of things. So we'll see what goes on there with the Mets and also the Yankees too, because we can tell you this, folks, hot stove is just getting heat. Let me rephrase that. The hot stove is just getting warm, ladies and gentlemen. That is exactly where we're going towards. Yes, it is just getting warm, and it will be sizzling come January. Should be a ton of fun in about a month, give or take. Well, Mike, let's keep moving forward here. And there's so much to talk about in the world of football. And especially we keep it right here in New York because Zach Wilson is coming back, and he will be the starter because Mike White was not cleared to play this week against the Detroit Lions. Now, the aforementioned Mike White, for those that do not remember, was hurt against Buffalo. He had gone to the hospital. He seemed to be okay. Did have a concussion, was not cleared to play. So Zach Wilson, he will play this week after being the number 2 quarterback he was inactive the last couple of weeks. And then I think it was last week, Mike, he was the number 2.
Yep.
Right? He was the number 2, right? So he's not going to, or he will play. Robert Saleh said today in the press conference earlier at Florham Park, quote, "This is going to be a great opportunity for Zach. When he was last elevated to number 2, it was with the understanding that there was a strong possibility he would play and to prepare accordingly." Yeah, I call BS on that one. I'll be honest with you. I did not expect Zach Wilson to ever suit up again for the Jets, especially because of what he said in front of the media early on. When he was benched, probably about a month ago, Mike. And that's something that was very scary too. When you look back and you say to yourself, this is a man that that is supposed to be or will be at some point the face of your franchise. And again, we go back to the 23rd of November when we were on with you. Connor Hughes of SNY said that Saleh had said about Zach Wilson's initial reaction to being benched was, quote, "Why now? Why me? I want to play," end quote, upon being benched. I honestly thought that he would just be the number 3, always in street clothes and never suiting up ever again for the Jets.
Yeah, but at the same time, they need to sort of mend this fence and figure this out, because just to toss him away like that right away, while you could see the rationale and obviously those comments very questionable in terms of accountability at a position like we've said before, absolutely demands the highest level of it.
Yeah.
This is a guy you picked number 2 in the draft. You've had so many issues with trying to lock down a long-term quarterback in the past. Like this is your number 2 pick, yet another chance to try and do so. And you've seen flashes of it do well. Like he started out this year, they were 5-2. There was a lot of positives with his play and how the team was doing with him behind center. Then obviously he's made the comments. They're now 7-6. Things have gone a little downhill. But this is, I think Robert Saleh is right. This is an opportunity for him where this is where he really needs to have the game of his life, because he needs to prove to. Obviously, hope the last couple weeks he's probably been mending the fence behind closed doors with the locker room. We obviously heard some concerning some concerning little quotes from the locker room in terms of their reaction to the situation and whatnot. So he probably had a lot of sort of mending the fence with the rest of the locker room behind the scenes, especially his fellow offensive guys in the wide receiver room. So you hope he learned his lesson from the comments, mended the fence there, and he comes back, and you really have to perform this week in an absolutely critical game in order to, hopefully, at least for now, solidify your future with the team and in the NFL. Otherwise, if he comes out on Sunday and does absolutely horribly, oh boy, I don't know how long he lasts. If they just pull him right away, and if Mike White is healthy, it's just the Mike White show. Whatever happens, no matter what happens the rest of the way, and then they move on from Wilson, I have that you're treading into some really scary waters.
Mike, do you see this week for Zach Wilson um, as a potential, I guess we can call it dress rehearsal for some video or some film that Joe Douglas and company could be gathering maybe to work out a trade in the future? Especially because, now listen to these numbers here. They're going up against a Lions defense, Mike, and I'll let you sizzle in your brain there, and I see the smoke coming out of your ears as you're thinking of this. The Lions defense has been struggling, but the offense has been out of this world, right? We've seen what Jared Goff has done. We've seen what Jamal Williams has done. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh Reynolds, Jameson Williams, the list goes on. Their defense, 26.7 points per game allowed, is 31st in the NFL. 403.2 yards per game allowed, 31st. 263.4 passing yards allowed is 30th in the league. And receiving yards allowed to wide receivers in even 200, which is 30th in the NFL. If this is not a day for Zach Wilson to feast, what is it?
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. They wind up they're gonna have tougher games the rest of the way. So you're exactly right. If he does not show up on Sunday, I don't think you're ever going to see it, at least for this season. And honestly, can you really call, even if it's positive in terms of the win-loss column, can you really call the Jets season a success if Wilson does not come out on Sunday and perform well and solidify himself? Because that was the whole premise of the year for the Jets, to continue to build with Wilson, and build upon his development, and building him out as the face of the franchise, your quarterback for the foreseeable future. And if they wind up like losing, really badly on Sunday, he performs, just as what he did a couple weeks ago against the Patriots when he, that was his last start in the last couple weeks. He performs like that. You now wind up in a situation where you now have more questions than answers over your most important position than you had at the start of the year. So even if you're sitting here and saying, well, the Jets are 7-6, or maybe they win a couple more games to end the year. Maybe let's say they're an 8-9 win team when all is said and done here this season. I don't know if that gets them into the playoffs or not, but that's a conversation for down the road.
Yeah.
Can you really look at their season as a success? Because there'll be more questions than answers.
Definitely something to be thinking about come really after the season. I think that's definitely going to be a conversation that I know we'll have to bring up on the Primetime Rundown once the regular season comes to a close, and even once February 12th hits, once the Super Bowl is here and gone, and we get ready for pretty much the NFL draft in late April. Because listen, that's kind of the things that the Jets will be looking towards too. Is that, well, if you need to trade away Zach Wilson, or potentially let him ride out as the bench guy, let him ride out on the rookie contract, and that's it. But I'm sure they'll want to try and get something for him if they can, which again at this point in time, just today, I would say late round pick, if anything like that. But again, and I think that might be being generous. We'll see if he can make it up to maybe a fourth round if he plays well enough on Sunday against the Lions. Real tough, because again, Mike, this Lions team, they've won 5 of their last 6, and they're sitting at 6-7 overall. They're red hot. They just beat the number 2 team in the NFC at home, the Minnesota Vikings, and they beat them handily. They beat them with no nothing. And again, that offense for Minnesota, they held them. They held them to, I don't even remember the score, but I think it was like a 15-point margin. It's crazy.
The 34-23 was the final score. So
okay, so 11 points.
Yeah, but I mean, like you said, this was the number 2 team in the NFC. Outside, other than Philadelphia, Minnesota have looked the most convincing teams in an otherwise very down NFC conference this year.
Yeah.
And yet again, like are the Vikings like 10-3, something like that this
Yeah.
year? And two of those losses are like really strange,
Yeah.
like the getting absolutely shellacked at home against the Cowboys, and
Yeah.
then this one to the Lions. Their division has been absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Besides them, this is a chance to pretty much lock it up, and they wind up giving up 34 points, a pretty uncompetitive game, which is surprising when you say Detroit Lions and dominating win in the same sentence.
Yeah.
But it's just they're 10-3, but they've just had some really strange games this year.
Well, we keep on moving forward, and we go to Thursday Night Football to the recap of Thursday Night Football. And as we always do, Rob DeLuca is not happy that we're discussing Thursday Night Football. He thinks that it's the worst, and that's exactly where we'll leave it at, because yesterday was actually a pretty good game for the most part. And San Francisco and Seattle, it was up in Seattle, which always is always a great atmosphere, and always is made out to be a great game. Now, Mike, we saw San Francisco. They looked really good for a second straight game. And I guess you could even call it once Jimmy Garoppolo had gotten hurt against Miami, you can kind of say 2.5 games with Brock Purdy, and he's looked phenomenal. This is Mr. Irrelevant becoming Mr. Relevant all of a sudden. And now we'll get to this later on, but, or we'll get to I've got a follow up on that after, with Jimmy G potentially, being gone with Brock Purdy's emergence. We'll get to that later. Tyler Lockett for Seattle broke his index finger yesterday on his right hand, probably out for the rest of the year, which I don't think is, well, actually it's not, I don't think. It is a crucial loss for them, because they're still in the playoff hunt, because now they're trying to fend off the Giants and they're trying to fend off the Commanders. And right now, they're on the outside looking in. So I don't know if they're hoping for another tie between the Giants and the Commanders on Sunday night. But what I do know is that Seattle is in a really precarious position. San Francisco locked up the NFC West, and they have an outside shot of getting the number 2 seed in the NFC. If Minnesota cannot get things done down the stretch and San Francisco can keep on going, watch out. Watch out for this team, Mike. And they looked really good last night.
Yeah, and it's the season for the San Francisco 49ers has just been such a twisty, windy roller coaster. You went from Trey Lance being the future and whatnot. They obviously traded up to the number 3 pick to draft him and whatnot. Then he gets injured right away. You're going over to Jimmy G, who everybody wants to upgrade on, but yet he's just so reliable. And you get some solid play from him, and then he gets hurt. Now you go to Brock Purdy, who they picked as the last pick of the draft, Mr. Irrelevant, and yet he just beat the GOAT. And what's more telling than obviously the quarterback carousel this year is how fantastic the defense has come along. Obviously, that's helped. What's obviously helped them is health. I think everybody forgot how good the 49ers defense is. And, we obviously saw that Super Bowl run a couple of years ago where they lost to the Chiefs. But this defense has always been there. This core has always been there. It's just never been at the same time. There's just been so many injuries and never been able to develop rhythm. Well, this year, everybody's been healthy. The defense has been, the lineup has consistently been, together. They developed that rhythm, and it's been an unbelievable defense. I think the numbers of, how many points they give up in the second half, like in the last month or so, is ridiculously low.
Yep.
And it's just the classic example, a team really rounding into form at the right time. They seem to put things together. And again, it goes back to the coaching of Kyle Shanahan really being adaptive to all sorts of quarterbacks, really rather than scheming toward the skills of a quarterback, he has a system. Everybody learns that system, and you just plug. I'll go play quarterback for San Francisco. Maybe I could throw a couple of completions before I get speared off the field by I don't know Joey Bosa when they go up against the Chargers or something like
Yeah.
that. So it's just fantastic how he constructs a system together, and Brock Purdy just looks so comfortable in the way he's playing and looks so confident. So that obviously has to go kudos to Kyle Shanahan for going through 3 quarterbacks this season and the last couple weeks barely missing a beat.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. And not only that too, I think when you look at the 49ers, you look and say to yourself, their defense too. Just a couple of years ago, it was tops in the league. Robert Saleh was the defensive coordinator. He got the head coaching job out here with the Jets. And then who comes in? D'Amico Ryans, who was the linebacking coach at the time for or under Robert Saleh. He was upgraded or got the promotion to become the defensive coordinator. And now Ryans is potentially a head coaching prospect who we expect, or at least I do anyway, to get a lot of phone calls to become a head coach. There's a couple of places where I could see him going, but we won't get into that just yet. We still have a long ways to go. Mike, yesterday, Brock Purdy, 17 of 26, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns. There was one giant touchdown that he threw over to George Kittle, 54 yards for a touchdown in the third quarter. Christian McCaffrey also had a touchdown, 26 carries for 108 yards, absolutely destroyed that run defense for Seattle. We brought up about George Kittle, 4 receptions, 93 yards, 2 touchdowns. And the wild part too, Mike, out of all of this, you brought up how they've been healthy for the most part outside of the quarterbacks. Deebo Samuel is out for the foreseeable future. Foreseeable future, not going into the playoffs. They expect him to probably be back week 18 or potentially the wild card round. They're doing all of this they did all of that yesterday without their one of the best wide receivers in the league, who can also be that flex guy, that Swiss Army knife on the running attack as well. So you look and say to yourself that this team has not only hit their stride at the right time, but this team could potentially be a team to watch out for come the playoffs where, and again, I hate to say this as an Eagles fan, they can upset the Philadelphia Eagles the way that this team is playing. There's no doubt in my mind. And again, the San Francisco defense held the Seattle rushers to just 70 yards. 70 yards. It's amazing what this team can do. Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa. The list goes on. And not only that too, their offensive line is clicking finally. Their offensive line, and when we spoke with Kyle Madsen too, when he was with us a few months ago, Mike, that was something that was very questionable heading into the season for this San Francisco 49ers team. I remember Kyle Madsen had said, yeah, things look pretty good everywhere with the exception of their offensive line. There's a lot of questions there. How's, Trent Williams? We know he is the anchor of that offensive line, one of the highest paid and best left tackles in the game. But how about the rest of them? How's Mike McGlinchey's health status? The rest, all the rest of those players. So you look and say to yourself what this defensive front can do, and they did allow Geno Smith, the defensive backs, allowed 31 for 44, 238 yards, a touchdown at the end that he had gotten for Noah Fant in the fourth quarter. Brought him only down to 8 points. Didn't really give him much wiggle room there. Kenneth Walker, 17 carries, 47 yards, 3.9 yards per carry. Tyler Lockett, we brought that up, 7 catches, 68 yards, 9 targets. Same thing with DK Metcalf, 9 targets, 7 catches, but for 55 yards. And San Francisco did a fantastic job. Pretty much they got DK Metcalf to not really, he lost his emotional temper a little bit. We saw that yesterday. There was a couple of, pushing and shoving incidents there with San Francisco yesterday because, it was, they got under DK Metcalf's skin, and it's really not that hard to do so if you know how to poke his buttons. San Francisco, man, I'm afraid of them. I'll be honest, I'm afraid of them. What are your thoughts? Just I guess to close out Thursday Night Football from yesterday.
Well, if you're going to win a championship in the NFL, it's always built on defense, and San Francisco always has, the last couple of years, always has a great construction to do so. And I think really health has been the big detriment for them getting back to anywhere close to the Super Bowl. I mean, even last year, I mean, they made it to the NFC Championship, and they really limped through a lot of that year and whatnot. So
Imagine if they were healthy. Imagine if they were up to full health.
yeah. Yeah, exactly right. And now they are pretty much, they're, other than Debo trying to work back, they are pretty much up to full health. So it is scary once they get to the playoffs. Their style of football and the way they built their team absolutely translates to the playoffs. And the acquisition of McCaffrey really offsets Debo being out for a couple weeks, and then everybody's healthy. You have another great weapon in CMC for the playoffs. I mean, it is scary to watch in a very underwhelming NFC where there not too many contenders that you're confident about that are going to advance. Somebody's going to have to. You give it's really Philadelphia, Minnesota, and San Francisco. There's not really anybody too convincing out of there. Obviously, Green Bay has had an atrocious year. You probably, obviously, the rest of the NFC North is a decent wild card team if they get in there. The rest of the NFC East, same story, will be a nice little story. Whether that's the Giants or the Commanders, and then will probably be a first-round exit. So San Francisco, I mean, man, they are prime. They are rolling. They secured their division, and now you could play out these next couple weeks. I don't want to say you completely take your foot off the gas because you're trying to go for the 2 seed and whatnot, but it's interesting. I'm sure health will be the focus these next couple of weeks now that the division is locked up.
Yeah, I could tell you this much. We'll get into that in a few short moments, but I could tell you this: the Giants, they don't want to go to San Francisco.
Oh no.
They want. I would say you put them with Minnesota. They honestly, I believe they have a chance if they play Minnesota. And I know. Listen, we've seen some positives from Kirk Cousins at times. We've seen it in the Dome in New Orleans. He's taken down Drew Brees in the wild card round. I think it was his first year or second year with Minnesota, and it looked great. But since then, Primetime, Kirk Cousins, you like it? No, or how do you like that? Right? That was his line, right? You like that? I think that was his line.
Yeah, he's like, you like that?
Yeah, no, we don't like that. His primetime performance is utter garbage. So I could tell you this much: the Giants, I think they would much rather play Minnesota, despite how they would have to go into a daunting atmosphere either way. Clinching scenarios, Mike, for week number 15. You look at a few games: Buffalo, Miami. Buffalo, they clinch a playoff berth if they win. Plain and simple. If they can't win, then they have to hope for a Chargers loss or a Jets and New England loss. Kansas City, they can clinch the division with just a win, and they can clinch a playoff berth if they can't win against Houston, which I think there would be a lot of problems if they can't beat Houston. It would have to be the Jets and the Patriots to lose, or the Miami Dolphins and New England to lose, or the Jets and Miami to lose to just clinch a playoff berth. Dallas, they can clinch a playoff berth on Sunday with a win, or Seattle already lost, so they would just need Detroit to lose and or Washington to lose. So that we would see there. And Minnesota, as we brought up, they clinch the division in the NFC North if they win or Detroit loses. So now that we've got that down pat, Mike, let's look at the top 5 things as we always look at. We won't go back from last week since last week already happened and week 15 already started last night. So week 15, top 5 things to be looking forward to. What do you got, your first couple?
All right, so on the fly, because as of course it is Friday night, So of course we had the brain fart of doing exactly what you had said at first and going through the top 5 things from week 14. So let's go on the fly. You mentioned the Bills and Dolphins.
Yes.
Critical game, especially for the Dolphins, really. Obviously, you want to stay in touch with Buffalo and
Yeah.
trying to win the division, but they had the Herbert versus Tua Tagovailoa battle last week, and I mean the Dolphins. They've been an electric offense at times this year, and they got absolutely shut down by the Chargers defense. At one point, Tua was 3 for 17 in the
Yep.
game. I think he wound up ending off 10 for 18. It was just really bad, and it should not have. The final score does not even tell the story of how uncompetitive that game. The final score was 23-17, but it never felt like the Dolphins were close at all.
Right.
They got a random touchdown from Tyreek Hill grabbing the ball out of a pile and just being the cheetah the rest of the way. And then I think it was a touchdown late on to try and hurry up something with 2 minutes left or something like that to try and get things going. But obviously time ran out on them. So it really was not a competitive game. So interesting to see how they bounce back with the division on the line. We went back, of course, we talked extensively about Zach Wilson and the Jets and how key that game is for them. Should be a really good one from MetLife, a venue that Detroit has played in already this season, where they smashed the Giants a couple of weeks ago. So there's not going to be a real, I don't think an issue of travel or having to deal with the road atmosphere or any of that sort of thing. They've already played in MetLife and been incredibly successful this year. So a really interesting, spicy game between two teams that in the last couple of weeks have headed in the wrong directions in terms of the win-loss column.
Yeah.
And then you look at the Cowboys, who last week had an interesting adventure with the AFC South as it continues this week with Jacksonville.
You ain't kidding. Wow.
They had some heart palpitations when it came to dealing with the Houston Texans. They should have looked through the Giants playbook of how to get an easy win over the worst team in the league. Apparently, they didn't read that handbook, and they gave their fans absolute heart attacks. I'm sure the Dallas medical offices were absolutely filled to the brims this week. And now, of course, now you actually have a legitimately competitive team in the AFC South and Jacksonville coming in, who just destroyed the Tennessee Titans and ripped them apart last week. So this should be fun for Dallas coming up this week. Interesting to see how they adjust to the heart attack from last week. This time on the road, I believe they'll be.
Yep. Yeah, they'll be in Florida.
And of course, one of mine, I think my last thing really alluding to my pick, interesting on the road, Cincinnati going up against the Bengals. Cincinnati going up against the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, who have absolutely had really bad year. The GOAT and Tom Brady has had a really terrible year. That offense has looked shambolic. And the Bengals, who are riding high, have won 5 straight, took down Kansas City last week or the previous week. So they are hitting their stride with Jamar Chase back and whatnot. That is going to be a really interesting game down in Raymond James Stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said pretty much a good chunk of what I had here, but I do have a trio that there's a couple that are different there from you, Mike, but I think the Cincinnati one against Tom Brady and the Bucs, it's been such an off year for them. When you look at what they've done this year, it's been such a carousel when it comes to their offensive line and the injuries as well, and also Tom Brady's divorce as well. That's a big deal too. That made news headlines. That you saw him in the beginning, he almost looked like he was jaundice. Really tough for him. He looked like his face was drawn. He finally found a rhythm. We saw that on Monday Night Football when he led that 2-minute drill, that comeback against the Saints, which was fantastic. But we really haven't seen much life in that Bucs offense or really even in the just on the Bucks team for the last really this season. It's really been crazy to see. So that's going to be tons of fun there. My 3 here, Mike, that I've got, the Titans and the Chargers. Now, it's not a game that one would probably have on their main television unless you're in a bar and you've got an alternate television that you could turn it on. You can definitely have that there. For me, that's not a game to watch, but it is definitely something to keep your eye on because it could be good football because both teams are in desperation mode. Now, the Titans, though, they are pretty much secure to win the AFC South. We get that. They play in probably the worst division in football that's not named the NFC South. They have behind them the Indianapolis Colts, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Houston Texans. Obviously, the Texans, they are pretty much locked in for the number 1 overall pick in 2023. But again, this is a team that should be hosting a playoff game and should be winning too, right? We've seen them go on the road. We've seen them win in the playoffs. But right now, they are really, really struggling, and I think that they would do themselves justice if they can get a victory against the Chargers because they got a really good one against Miami, as you brought up, a few moments ago or a few days ago. It's a must-win for both. The Chargers, though, they need to build off of that momentous Miami win. That was really amazing to see what they did because, again, a few weeks ago, they were pretty much no-shows. They needed to win, and they were winnable games for them, and they simply could not get that done. So Titans-Chargers might be a sneaky game to watch. The Steelers and the Panthers is a game that is pretty much one that, you can pretty much turn your head away from. But some of the headliners there is Sam Darnold. Could he repeat the performance that he did last week, which was a nice thing against Seattle, which unfortunately threw away a few of our picks in the pool. And then also the Steelers, they've never finished under 500 with Mike Tomlin. And Mike Tomlin's been there for 16 years. 16 years, and they have never once finished under 500, which is definitely something that we will have to keep our eye out for. Who knows? We'll see if Darnold can build off of that win because now he is the guy. He and PJ Walker, those are the guys that are there. And Mike, my last thing to look forward to, since you said you're 5, I've got my 3. The Giants and the Commanders. Again, I'm looking forward to this because pretty much the winner of this game, their playoff chances go through the roof, right? And the loser of this game, again, it's not out of the woodwork where they can whatever, but again, it would be awfully tough to, and they'll still have that playoff position because, again, they're still a half game up of Seattle. But one win, one loss can change the difference. And that margin of error, if you lose this game, if you're the Giants or the Commanders, becomes that much smaller. So if you're the Giants, you have to win. If you're the Commanders, you have to win. And it was flexed into Sunday Night Football. I'm pumped to see that game because I'm so happy to see the NFC East back to being the best conference in football. And it has been such a long time since you were in diapers. It's been such a long time since this conference, or since this division rather, has been one of the best in the league. So with that being said, those are my top 3, since Mike brought up his 5 and he took a couple of mine. Those are my top 3 picks, or my top 3 things to watch for week 15. With that being said, Mike, let us take a peek and see at how we did this week or this past week with our results from week 14. So we look back and we say to ourselves, well, okay, the Giants absolutely got destroyed by the Eagles. Evan picked them. Tyler Adele picked the Bills against the Jets. Nick Amiano picked the Chiefs over the Broncos. And Rob DeLuca is now in a tie for first place in, or I guess the overall standing, or the overall individual standing, with Larry Pertakowitz at 12-2. Rob DeLuca picked the Cincinnati Bengals over the Cleveland Browns. I chose the Titans. They lost to the Jaguars, and so did you, Mike. And again, that was a game that we had on our calendar. We didn't think that it would be a Jaguars win, and they beat them handily.
Yeah.
Really crazy stuff to see.
I mean, they've been competitive this year, but I was quite shocked with that. And in hindsight, I'll always say this in hindsight after a Survivor Pool loss, but I mean, that was a good pick by Rob. That was the play last week. But yeah, that was shocking from Jacksonville.
Looking at the standings also, Primetime Rundown crew leads the Essential Wrestling Podcast crew still by 4 games. There was no movement because both squads went 2-4. Myself and John DeCani on the Essential Wrestling Podcast side are tied for first still. And looking on the other side too, DeLuca and Larry Protakowicz are both tied 12-2. And then look at Mike Szabo all the way down there at 500, 7-7. On the season, and Casey Bryant is having a brutal year, 5-9, 7 games back from DeLuca and LP. So the season ends for us in about 3 weeks, since it seems as if I don't believe that John DeCani or myself can catch both LP or DeLuca. So one of those two will be taking away the individual award. And last year we saw it was John DeCani and Ian Schraier who had that award. That was, went all the way to the Super Bowl. They simply could not, they could not figure out who would win, and it was John DeCani who was the winner in the end. So with that being said, Mike, let us get to our picks. Who do you have? You brought up Cincinnati and Tampa earlier, so I'm guessing that is one of the teams you're going to go with.
Yep, that's alluding to my pick. I am taking the Cincinnati Bengals to go on the road and take down the GOAT and add to his misery down in Tampa Bay. Cincinnati over Tampa this weekend.
Unreal stuff. And it's crazy because just a couple of years ago, you would never, no one would have ever said that.
Yep.
No one would have ever said that. But that is the way things are going now here in the NFL. And I think also it makes for better competition too. And, it makes for better ratings too. It makes for better marketing too, where, there's just so many unknowns. It's not a super team. We know Kansas City, how good they are, but with a down year in the NFC, Mike, as you brought up, it's anyone's game. It's anyone's season. It's anyone's Super Bowl, anyone's trophy. You never know who it could be. So, and everyone's really beating up on each other with the exception of, the Eagles, the Chiefs. And you really can't really even say anything anymore about the Buffalo Bills either. They're having some trouble too. They'll be playing tomorrow night, mind you, 8:15 up in Buffalo. And they are expecting, by the way, another 3 feet of snow, lake effect warning up in Western New York. And at game time, they are expecting to have at least 1 foot on the ground over there in Buffalo. But we can tell you this, there's no movement. We have not heard anything. Miami is in Buffalo. They're okay. And that game is going to go on as scheduled. So we'll have to keep our eyes out and see how that can affect things. I mean, hey, listen, remember 2013 Eagles and Lions, the Snow Bowl. It was a fun time seeing LaShawn McCoy and Calvin Johnson and Megatron running through the snow, inches of snow down in Philadelphia. But I don't know. It's going to be a ton of fun to see. But Miami, this is a team, again, Mike, that they play in the warmth. But Tua Tagovailoa, he pretty much shut those critics down and said, you guys do know that it snows in Alabama, right? So you never know what's going to happen there. But that's going to be an intriguing game tomorrow to see what goes on there. Because, again, Miami, they got shut down. Buffalo is not that. They're skidding along the throughway. And they have to get back. They have to get back, and they're not playing an easy opponent. Let's just go with that.
Ridiculously moronic that when Buffalo's building this new stadium, that there wasn't a dome. If that hasn't been on the record already, I will say it. That was absolutely moronic for Buffalo, their climate and whatnot. Ridiculously asinine that they did not build a dome. They'll never host a Super Bowl and whatnot. They lose all of all of that. We ever bring it up in a longer conversation, I cannot get over that decision and how stupid that was.
Let the record show Mike Szabo cannot stand the fact that the new Buffalo Bills stadium is not an indoor one. It's not a dome. It's not, does not have a retractable roof, does not have anything. So, okay, well, we've got that, Mike.
1942, not 1946, people.
Okay, well, there you go. We've got that on the record. My pick, the Philadelphia Eagles over the Chicago Bears. Now, I'll be honest with you. I was teetering. I really was. I was going to go with Kansas City, but I decided, you know what? I looked back and I figured, you know what? I'll take the Eagles this time. Should be an easy victory. Justin Fields is sick also. He didn't practice on Wednesday. He was out. They don't know with what. So we'll see how hot he's going to be, or how ready he's going to be, also. So, and Eagles fans travel. So we'll see what happens there out in the Windy City, because any climate for Jalen Hurts and company, they seem to be okay with it. They seem to be all right with it. So, and they play in a cold city anyway, in Philadelphia. So, Eagles over Chicago. There's no clinching, no clinching scenario for the Eagles this week to potentially clinch that one, or the NFC East that will start the 24th against Dallas. Mike, let's keep moving forward here. And on Sunday, as you brought up, thank you for reminding me. I had said at the top of our show, Argentina and France is tomorrow. No, that is Croatia and Morocco is tomorrow. The third place game is tomorrow. Sunday morning is the World Cup final. Argentina versus France. Lionel Messi versus Kylian Mbappe, one of the best players in the world. Probably can make the case that, if he takes down Messi, he'll be the best player in the world. But it also depends on how he does against the Julian Alvarez's of the world and everything like that. But Mike, there is some breaking news, though, when it comes to France. I don't know if you saw this, but there is a virus going around that locker room. So, yeah, that was reported by ESPN this morning.
That was reported, but I think they said the same thing about the Netherlands coming into the U.S. game, and look how fooled we got by that.
Definitely
I started getting into false hope that we're having less than 100% players, and what happened? The U.S. got destroyed. It's a World Cup final. I'm sure. Obviously, I think a virus, obviously is concerning. They got a day or so to hopefully make sure that everybody is healthy, but I'd be really shocked if things are going to be significant. But hopefully, everybody's going to be healthy. We never like to see that kind of stuff.
So, Argentina and France, though, this is your Super Bowl, Mike. Lionel Messi. He is the GOAT.
Yeah.
So you say. Rob DeLuca has other ideas, though.
Oh boy.
But I think what you need to do, Mike, I think you need to sound off, and I think you need to tell everybody what this all, air out those grievances with Rob DeLuca. You got to tell him why this is going to be Argentina's game, or Kylian Mbappe's game. What do you got?
Well, man, I really want to see Messi win. Argentina, obviously he is, in my mind. I mean, I never saw. Obviously, none of us have ever saw Pele. We never saw Maradona. Those are the two guys who probably have the biggest claims of being the greatest of all time. Multiple World Cups. Every laundry list of trophies you can expect. But Messi has just been. I mean, he unbelievable in terms of the goal totals. He's surpassed Maradona on that. Club titles ridiculously has surpassed him there. This is the one last missing piece of trophy. He had a crack at it in 2014. They lost to Germany. This is redemption time. Messi has been the MVP of this tournament. He's, in what is apparently, you hear all his comments and whatnot and body language that this is going to be his last World Cup. I mean, he, one way or another, whatever happens Sunday, he's left it on a really good note. He's performed for Argentina really well, has been probably the man of the match in every single game his team has participated in this tournament. And this matchup with France, it's really the GOAT in my mind right now, because of not only the goals, but I mean just what he means to the team in terms of creating the attention that teams need to put toward him. Ronaldo is, to go to Rob's point, Ronaldo is probably one of the best, if not the greatest finisher and goal scorer and whatnot. But Messi just means so much more in terms of the game and in scoring and generating those opportunities and whatnot. So there is the GOAT debate to me, as quick as I can sum it up. But this matchup versus France, it's the GOAT versus the mini GOAT. I think Kylian Mbappe has a huge opportunity here. I mean, just think about what he's achieved so far. He scored so many goals on the club level. He's the face of France, and obviously staying at home in Paris Saint-Germain rather than going abroad and whatnot. That was rumored last year. So he's stuck around there. He's become this cult figure in France. Wins a World Cup at 19 years old 4 years ago. Now he has the chance. If France wins and he takes down Messi, you're talking about 2 World Cups at the age of 23. I mean, as much as I acknowledge Messi as the GOAT right now, if Kylian Mbappe wins on Sunday, he's only 23. He's well on his way to start his own conversation as the greatest of all time. So, I mean, this is, just look at those 2 names, Messi and Mbappe. This is going to be quite the matchup. But unfortunately, I think in the end, France just has too good of an offense. Argentina, they've looked solid at times, but defensively, it's been a struggle at times. You saw against Netherlands, they bottled a 2-goal lead with 10, 15 minutes to go. There's been periods where they've looked shaky. So, and against a team like France that, I mean, they wind up beating England when they didn't play their best at all in that semifinal a couple of days ago. So, I mean, you look at, England outplayed them as sort of like a scary thing of, what can a team like Argentina do? But you also look at it as a little bit scary of, my God, France got to the final, and that wasn't even them hitting their full gear. So this team just seems like they always have that next gear to go into, and I think they just have too good of an offense for Argentina to handle.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here then. So if Lionel Messi loses to the, as you brought up, the mini GOAT, or I think the better way to put it is the up and coming GOAT, and he's almost there. He's almost there already. Messi versus Ronaldo in terms of the greatest of all time, right? To kind of lay that conversation or put that conversation to bed, Mike. If Messi loses, if he cannot get the World Cup, who's the greatest of all time?
I think it's still Messi right now, because even though he would have lost 2 finals, that's 2 more finals than Ronaldo has ever been to. Ronaldo, the greatest, the greatest performance or the greatest achievement they've had in the World Cup, I believe, was Portugal making the semifinals, and that was back in 2006, where he was the baby and not even the main part of Portugal, or he was really the up and coming star of Portugal at the time. They won the European Championship. Sure, Ronaldo has 8 World Cup goals, but he has not scored a goal in the knockout stage. In terms of World Cup performances, Messi runs laps around him in terms of the performances over 4 or 5 World Cups they've played in over the course of their career. So I don't think anything that happens on Sunday affects anything of Messi versus Ronaldo.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely have to have that on record. The last time Argentina and France met in an international game, whether it be a friendly or FIFA World Cup, 2018 World Cup, June 30th, France won 4-3. That was the last time that those 2 teams met, Mike. Do you remember that match?
Oh, absolutely. I was watching that. That was the 2018 World Cup quarterfinal.
Yeah.
Argentina was up 2-1, and then all of a sudden it was like they angered the beast, and all of a sudden France just had that second half explosion. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 3-2 game like that again.
Okay, well, we'll definitely have to keep our eyes on that. Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. It'll be a ton of fun to see that final just before American football. And that is the last time that we will see the World Cup and the men's side of things until 2026 here in this country. Be tons of fun then. I can tell you, I know Mike will be draining that bank account to travel to span the country to go to go see some World Cup football. Unbelievable stuff. Mike, let's move over to the ice and the National Hockey League. Obviously, we've got a chance to see Alexander Ovechkin. He netted his 800th goal against Chicago on Tuesday night. It was on national television, no surprise, on ESPN. And he did it against Chicago. It was a hat trick, 7-3 win on Tuesday. What an amazing job that Alex Ovechkin continues to be on such a porous Washington team that simply does not play defense. They get lit up. There are and really there's not not much of a team there outside of Ovechkin, outside of Tom Wilson, who has been on the shelf the whole year, TJ Oshie. We don't know what's happening with Nicholas Backstrom. We know that Anthony Mantha has been an absolute bust. John Carlson, there's really not much defense behind him. It's crazy. And, you've grown up watching Alexander Ovechkin. You've seen him be the potential, one of the greatest hockey players ever. We know in hockey there's no debate on who the GOAT is, but one of the greatest hockey players of all time, and Alexander Ovechkin now is on his way to trying to break that record that the GOAT in Wayne Gretzky has held for so many years that a lot of folks still think that is unattainable for him.
Oh, it seems like Ovechkin just seems to have that longevity. I don't think it's that crazy to assume that this time next year, maybe he's going to hit that mark. He's still incredibly productive. So you think about it, we still got another 50 some odd games in the regular season or whatnot. I don't think they're going to go much more than that. I don't think Washington's a playoff team.
No.
So you got quite a bit of games in the regular season to go. Obviously, quite a couple of months to get. Probably he gets into the 840s, maybe 830s, something like that.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say probably 820s. I would say it's probably going to take him probably about I would say 2025 is when he would break it.
And the question is, would he still keep on playing? And that's going to be the interesting part.
I think his contract, Mike, I think he signed that 5-year deal. I think it was something like that.
Oh, okay. So
he's at 800 goals now. He's got one goal. He'll tie Gordie Howe with 801, and then he'll work his way up after that. So he's got a long ways to go. But 894, it's definitely attainable with the contract that he's got. But can he play up to that high level for however long at the age of, let's say, I think he's 37? Hey, he still has another 4. After this year, he's got 3 more years. So figure, does he score 40 next year, right? Again, you're not going to get 50 every single year.
Yeah.
You're not going to get 50. You're not going to get anything higher than that. So you figure 40 goals, and it all depends also on the trajectory of the team too.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to be passing? Who's, Evgeny Kuznetsov. He's going to be there for a little bit, but there's some, I think Kuznetsov is there for as long as Ovechkin is signed for. So go on. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mike.
No, yeah, I mean it's just perfectly summed up there. It's going to be interesting, huh? It's all about longevity. I don't doubt he can break the record. It's just about being there that long. I think he'll eventually chip away and wind up reaching Wayne Gretzky, which just still sounds so ridiculous.
It's crazy, right? Yeah.
But, I think he's going to still wind up making it. There's nothing to suggest him slowing down at the moment. So yeah. I still say maybe 3 years. I think he's going to get it.
So our friend Rob DeLuca, decided to chime in, and he says me. Okay. Well, first off, DeLuca, you're chiming in here, and you're not on the show. That's a disgrace. That's a disgrace right there. And then Ovechkin passing this record with ease, and you can't stop him. Okay. All right. Hey, listen, I didn't say he couldn't get it. I didn't say he couldn't get it. I said, when is he going to get it? I did not say he could not get this record. I said he's not going to score 50 goals every single year. That's not going to happen. That is unattainable, 50 goals a year. I would say he's definitely going to get it, but it's a matter of when will he get it, says me, Rob DeLuca. Come back on the show for once, right? Instead of sitting on the couch, okay? But we keep on rolling here with the sport of hockey. Mike, the Rangers, they look pretty good. 5 straight wins. They halted Mitch Marner's 24-game point streak yesterday. They beat Toronto by a score of 3-1 last night. And things look pretty good all of a sudden when things were looking very, very down. Do you feel that they could keep it going? And where's the trajectory for them? After seeing all of the downfalls, and now they're slowly climbing out of the hole that they've dug themselves into.
Crazy how a week changes things, Joey. Where we were recently talking about Galant's job is game to game right now, and all that sort of stuff, and it just was a real struggle at one point. And listen, give credit to the shaking up of the lines, and not only bringing the kid line together, but moving them up to the second line to give them more time on the ice has just been, it's just lit a spark on the team. Obviously the kid line has looked better, in particular Philip Hedl, who scored the first goal in last night's game against Toronto, scored the overtime winner against New Jersey on Monday night. So he's looked a lot better as of late, as well as that line. Panarin and Zibanejad being paired on the top line has looked a lot better as well, even if it's not. I think it's it's helped Zibanejad. I think he's gotten like a couple power play goals and whatnot. It's helped him out a little bit, but they certainly looked a lot better, with the shaking up of the lines a little bit. So it's funny. You go on this pendulum lately. Are the Rangers good? They've been really bad to start off. It's been a real uphill battle, pulling your teeth struggle for the last couple of weeks for most of the season. But you kind of get the feeling now. 5 straight. You look at the schedule. I mean, listen, it would be the most Rangers thing to do by having the week that they had against some of the better teams in the National Hockey League, and then falling on their face the next couple of days. But I mean, you look at it. You got the Flyers and you got Chicago, who you hope to get revenge on after absolutely god awful listless loss a couple weeks ago. On December 3rd, 5-2, ridiculously stupid loss. So you're looking at it, the Flyers and who really looked a little bit all over the place, although they beat the Devils yesterday. And then you got Chicago. Maybe you're talking about they can pick up 2 more wins this weekend, and now you're talking 7 straight. And maybe this is a turn of the corner. Like I said, the line shakeup has really helped. They look a lot fresh. The play is just looking a lot more positive.
Well, our good friend Rob DeLuca has a couple of words for you here. So he says, "Who would have thought our good friend Ian Schraier was right and dropping Kreider was the answer? Are we going to have to apologize to him? Maybe. Mike told us Kreider was inevitable."
Inevitable does not mean there is a defined role of being top line or whatnot. Wherever he is in, I don't care if it's the first line, left wing, or it's the third line, or it's the fourth line and whatnot. Has he still been scoring? He still has 14 goals on the year. It's not like he's been invisible. He's not been as inevitable as last year, but he's been there. He's always gonna find a way, no matter what line he's on. So yes, indeed, Rob DeLuca, he is still inevitable.
Oh, okay. That is some fighting words for after the show between Mike and Rob DeLuca, because again, I don't know. DeLuca does not believe that Kreider is inevitable. Mike believes that he still is. So we'll see.
Oh, he was on the bandwagon with me last year, just as a little goat to Ian, jumping on the bandwagon of Kreider's run to 50+ goals. Now, at the first sign of adversity, he's jumping off. Come on, he's got 14 goals. He's well on his way to 30+, which is exactly what Kreider should be doing.
Oh man, that is a Devils fan right there. That is a Devils fan.
No
right
pun
there.
intended.
Oh man. Well, you brought up about, switching things and, Rob, before we move on here, Rob DeLuca says, any chance to swipe Ian is a chance must be taken. Very nice. Very nice. So we move on here to, Mike, you brought up about with the Rangers, how they've been moving things around, but, they want to extend certain players. And I think one of which being Philip Hedl, who is due for a contract. He is a restricted free agent, arbitration eligible, but the salary cap is expected to rise just $1 million to $85 million for the 2023-24 season. Still $70 million left in escrow. This is probably for so many teams, and I can tell you the Rangers probably the top team that are so disappointed in this. When you look and say to yourself, crap, they're going to have about $3.5 million off the books anyway. But now it has to go to Hedl. It's going to have to go to a few other guys. And what do you see there with that $1 million, that you could potentially use to shore up your team moving forward?
Well, for the Rangers, you went from having $4 million in cap space at the start of next offseason. You could have had $7 million if the escrow would have been gone, and some of the reports that had been floated around that the cap could go up much higher than expected with the escrow being gone and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So you went from being potentially $7 million in cap space. Now down to 4 again. So I don't know, Joey, I guess you and I are just going to have to go to a lot more hockey games and contribute to the National Hockey League fund again. So I regretfully admit that I have not been to an NHL game in 10 years. So that is going to have to change and then some. So we're going to have to, really erase the bank account a little bit to help out the NHL here. So,
well, I can tell you this. Our good friend Rob DeLuca has been deciding to go to these random Devils games, making the drive from Stamford to Newark. Simply can't make the drive from Stamford to Long Island, though. But he can go to Newark. He can go to Newark at any time. He can go to Boston. He can go to Buffalo. But he cannot go to Long Island. It's terrible. Rob DeLuca says he's dancing to MSG. Are you dancing to MSG, Mike? Is that where you're going to be going, spending thousands of dollars on a ticket? Huh?
It's not officially confirmed yet, but I'll say 80% I will definitely be at a game this year.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Rob DeLuca said,
as they say in the sports reporting world, there have been light conversations in recent days. We are planning dates and whatnot, so to be determined. We need to, on the overall note, we all need to start putting up billboards, Joe, if not us two. Bring your friends, bring your acquaintances, bring everybody, contribute to the National Hockey League, get more ticket revenue so the cap can somehow magically go up again.
Unbelievable. Like I said, we are hoping that Rob DeLuca helps out the New Jersey Devils and the New Jersey Devils only by just going to all of those games. And that's exactly what he was doing too. But like I said, he went to the Garden, right? He couldn't make it to UBS Arena, but he was able to make it to the Garden. And watch, we'll see. He'll make it up to Boston one of these days because he doesn't have to drive. He could just go right up by Amtrak or whatever the train is up there. Because, hey, listen, that's what he wants to do. He can't come to Long Island, right? Right, Mike? Unbelievable stuff. It's a disgrace.
Just here's some excuses over here.
Oh my goodness. Unbelievable stuff. Mike, you know what I find really crazy? Georgetown lost.
Really?
They did. They lost to Xavier.
Huh.
Yeah, they
Well,
lost to Xavier. That shouldn't surprise you.
no, but there was hope there.
Yeah. There was and listen, you know what? They went on a 7-0 run. Things look decent. Not bad. Going back to what Rob DeLuca now, this is an insult. This is an insult. First off,
It's
it's not
on.
in, it's on. First off, it's what is even on Long Island for starters. Okay. And I guess his friends aren't there. That's cool. I got it. I got it.
Ouch.
Okay.
Ouch.
That is a, wow. Shot through the heart.
Ouch.
Brutal. Brutal, brutal, brutal. Yeah, Georgetown lost, Rob. They lost, and they lost to Xavier. No surprise there. Jack Nungy, Zach Fremantle, Sean Miller off to a good start. This is the opening night of Big East play, Mike. With the exception, of course, DePaul and St. John's back about 12 days ago, or sorry, 9 days ago, completely off. Creighton and Marquette going at it right to my right. So yeah, this is going to be a fun one. Tomorrow we've got Seton Hall and Providence. We also have St. John's and Florida State. Mike, while we have an extra few minutes here, since we are almost complete with our show, St. John's and Florida State, our good friend Kevin Connolly is down there. Down in Sunrise. And Florida State right now, they are the de facto home team on a neutral floor. But St. John's, they've opened up, or the opening line for them is 10.5. I'm very surprised that it wasn't a little bit lower.
Yeah, especially I know it's a neutral site, but definitely being on the road and whatnot, that's a little bit a little bit surprising there. There's a lot of confidence, I guess, in St. John's. Who, I mean, we always go back to the narrative about the schedule. Not saying it's not valid, but I mean that's been very exhaustive. So I don't think we'll need to go too much in depth there. But there's the schedule, and then being on the road and whatnot. So I'm a little bit surprised with the 10.5 to open, and maybe by the time tip off comes around, I'm sure if the line maybe drops slightly, maybe it winds up being 8.5 when all is said and done.
Yeah, especially when again you're going up against a Florida State team who, they're 3-9. They are really struggling this year. And if I'm not mistaken, too, Mike, just looking back at their schedule, they went on a pair of 4+ game losing streaks. They lost to Siena. They lost to Nebraska by almost 20. They lost to Purdue by 10, and then they lost to Virginia, the number 3 team in the country, by just 5 points, right?
Yeah, number 2 at the time.
Yeah, exactly. And also, they opened up their season against Stetson, UCF, Troy, Florida. They lost all 4 of those. Their lone win in the month of November was against Mercer, 81-72. Then they've gotten a pair of back-to-back wins, Louisville and South Carolina upstate. Listen, this is a team that St. John's should simply not, they should not have any problem covering. Should not. But Rob DeLuca.
How many times have we said that before?
Exactly. DeLuca, you listen, he says terrible line. St. John's is not good against the spread. Bet everything you have on Florida State to cover. Okay, that's definitely something. Well, I mean, unfortunately, I will be in New Jersey, so actually I can bet on the game. I can't bet right now if I wanted to, but the bottom line, though, is that, again, this is a team, though, that really should win handily by 20 points.
Well, I will pick out this example, and I know I don't want to offend the Syracuse fans too much, but, I mean, it's a bad year up there, and, I mean, St. John's were taken to overtime by them.
Yeah.
So they've made a little bit of – and it's really a lot of teams, whether it's this year or in the past, the teams hang around and whatnot. Whether they win or lose, they wind up hanging around, and they don't cover the spread and things like that sort of happen. So I don't know if it's going to be 10, 15 point win or whatnot. It really should be because Florida State, obviously, as you mentioned, coming into this game 3-9, have really just I don't think anybody expected them to be this bad. So as much as we criticize the schedule, this is one that you can't really fault too much. Neutral site game against an ACC team. You thought this would be a much better matchup in terms of the metrics and whatnot, but instead Florida State 3-9, absolutely struggling and whatnot. So this is a game that, again, they should win convincingly. Joel Soriano has had a fantastic year. The guard play has been somewhat up and down. I think what was it? It feels like so long ago since they played that they won that game against New Hampshire. They've had this week off for finals and whatnot. But the guard play kind of took off the night against New Hampshire. Andre Cabello only had 5 points, 4 rebounds in 24 minutes. It was kind of the coming out party of AJ Storr, who I guess it's because of defense, maybe the experience of Montez Mathis being preferred and whatnot, but I just don't see how AJ Storr doesn't get more minutes. And I'm sure he will as the year goes along, but this is for the Mike Anderson era, your highest ranked recruit. He fills one of the team's biggest needs in terms of 3-point shooting. I mean, the 3-point shooting, it's just been absolutely horrendous. Every time he's been in, he makes an impact, and especially shooting from beyond the arc. The Posh Alexander didn't have a good game either, and what's quietly been a season where he's really, really struggled and taken a step back compared to his last 2 years. I think maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, the 2 reallys as opposed to 1, but I think there has to be a little bit of a concern there, because you thought taking him off the ball when you brought in Andre Cabello would help out his shooting game a little bit and focus on that. And the 3-point shot is not falling. It just doesn't seem to be having the same influence on games that he had in his first 2 years at St. John. So that's really concerning as we, the game tomorrow, and then you get into conference play is to a certain extent. Yeah, Cabello's been great. He's worked out the mid-range game shooting that he's brought, and the flair that he's brought has been fun. But getting Posh Alexander right is kind of
crucial,
a big deal.
Yeah. Well, Rob DeLuca agrees with you. He says Villanova turned their season around against Oklahoma. Wake-up call is coming on Wednesday down in Finneran. Myself, Jaden Daly, Kevin Connolly will all be there to take a peek at how that game.
Moore's healthy again. Yeah. Justin Moore is creeping around the corner.
Yeah, he'll probably be back. I don't want to say probably, but a better chance that we see him on the 20th of January at MSG when Villanova comes to St. John's to conclude their season between one another. Looking back also with Florida State, just kind of looking back on the other side of things too, we know about Cameron Fletcher, who was a big recruit at the time for John Calipari over at Kentucky, and he leads the way in rebounds. He's a 6'7" guy. This is going to be a game where all you need to do very simply is just, again, attack the paint, give it to Joel Soriano, and I think you'll be able to figure a few things out. Again, 3-point shooting percentage, though, they're going to have to cover Darren Green Jr. He leads the way, I think, with 42%, 43% from distance. So they're going to have to, they're going to have a hard time with him. But all said and done, there should be no reason why this team should not win by more than 15. But again, as DeLuca has said to us, time in and time out, this is the time where you pound FSU, especially at a 10.5 point spread, because St. John's does not do well with the spread. Mike, let's keep on rolling here. And since we've got a few minutes left, we're going to conclude our show with our kudos, of course. And let us get to your kudos first before we get into our business side of things.
Well, of course, our kudos, not really on a happy note, but we heard, of course, the news today of Louis Orr passing away. The great the shout out to Syracuse basketball and the great, Louie and Bowie show way back when. Fantastic player that, he was, and has had a really accomplished coaching career as well. Most recently, we saw him as an assistant with Patrick Ewing and that Georgetown squad that won the Big East championship a few years ago, behind closed doors in Madison Square Garden. So, rest in peace to him. A fantastic individual, unbelievable player in what he's done for the game of basketball and really game of college basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. He was also a Seton Hall coach. He was a Syracuse coach. He was also an assistant coach under Patrick Ewing. Also, in 2021 when they won the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden during that COVID year. So that was a big deal for him too. So may he rest in peace. My kudos goes actually, oddly enough, to Georgetown president, who basically came out today and brought up how, and I think I had sent it to you also, the trajectory of, this team is absolutely abysmal. And, it all starts from the top. You know what I'm saying? It starts from the top, and the president basically took no accountability for everything that's gone on and has praised Patrick Ewing for everything that he's done. And when you look at Georgetown athletics, it's simply not great. Granted, they did do well with men's soccer. They do well with women's soccer. They do great on the pitch, but when it comes to the hardwood, they simply cannot get out of their own way. And I wouldn't be surprised again after that massive contract that they locked media members out of, for that press conference a few years ago. That again, it screams volumes. It really does. It's a deafening action that Georgetown took at the time, and there's no accountability whatsoever. So Georgetown will continue to not get a Big East win. They lost tonight to Xavier. Their last win was their last Big East conference win was in 2021 when they won the tournament. Really sad stuff to see. So my kudos goes to the president for being absolutely out of touch when it comes to college basketball and really college athletics as a whole, because you have to make a change, and you have to understand what's going on as well. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show. Let us get you some quick updates here on Tuesday night, December 20th, 5 p.m. Our guys, John DeConnie, Al Carl, John Smith, and Gary Mehefe will be bringing you episode number 130 of the Essential Wrestling Podcast, presented to you by ProWrestlingPick'em.com. You can take a peek here at 5 p.m. on the Eastern Observer to pretty much go through the world of wrestling. You can also hear it the next day on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, and YouTube as well. Ladies and gentlemen, also please be sure to subscribe to us by searching the Primetime Rundown on the following platforms: Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Odyssey too. And if you'd like to see our beautiful faces, please search Eastern Observer on YouTube. Also, let's keep in mind too, we want to do the exact same thing if we can for the Essential Wrestling Podcast. The exact same platforms can be found also for EWP, and also if you'd like to see their faces, Eastern Observer on YouTube as well. Also, ladies and gentlemen, one final time too, be sure to download the newest hit song for Black Cats NYC, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us, out right now on Google Play, Apple Podcast, Apple Music, as well as Pandora, Spotify, YouTube, and also you can hear it anywhere along the Sirius XM platform as well. So pretty good stuff there from Andrew Giordano and his entire crew. All right, so because we do have a couple more minutes, we cannot thank Rob DeLuca enough for being, I guess, home where he is. He had a work party, couldn't be here. He's never here anymore. But he's decided to write to us, and we appreciate that. We appreciate that all the time, to have some folks tune in and be a part of the show, whether it be via text, whether it be on the air with us. So we do appreciate that. DeLuca, former co-host of ours. He says here, Georgetown forever remains inferior to St. John's. Nothing shall change this. We're going dancing. Good Lord, Rob DeLuca. And look at this. Rob is actually giving us his pick this week. Oh, look at this. We're taking the Carolina Panthers. You don't ever bet on the Pittsburgh Steelers and expect wins. Is this a shot at Ian Schraier for last week? I think it is.
God.
Nobody would ever be crazy enough to pick them in a survivor pool. Who would ever? My back. Well, looking at it here, hold on. We have to get this up here. Hold on 1 second. We have to just see. Ian Schraier is the one to pick Pittsburgh last week. So, well, shots fired there.
Shots fired, and poor Ian's not here.
Shots fired. Oh, that is fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, one final time for Mike Szabo, Ian Schraier, who will be back with us awfully soon. He'll be concluding his paternity leave. I'm Joey Jarzynka. For all of us here from oh my goodness, we're losing it. We need this year to end. From all of us here at Blackjack Media Group and the Eastern Observer, we say Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and a Happy New Year to all out there celebrating, and we will see you all in 2023.